Welcome to the Arrington Gavn Show. Real talk, big opinions, and fearless conversations. From the front lines of politics to the latest in pop culture. From breaking sports headlines to the stories that move the world. Nothing's off limits, and nobody's holding back. Arrington Gavn is here to break it down, build it up, and keep it all the way real. So turn it up, lean in, and let's get into it. This is the Arrington Gavn Show.
What is happening, ladies and gents? Welcome to the Arrington Gavn Show, your go-to spot for sharp insights, bold opinions, and unfiltered takes on the biggest stories of the day, whether it is politics, sports, pop culture, or the latest buzz. Look, as always, we are diving deep and keeping it real, so please do me a favor, kick back, stay informed, and get ready to join the conversation. Look, on today's conversation, I'm so honored to have on Miss Donna Charles. Donna Charles is a proud Air Force veteran and former civil servant with over 20 years of experience in national security and foreign policy. Look, but she's also she has a new title ahead. She is the current candidate for governor for the state of Virginia. Yes, she is running for the state of Virginia. Now, if you're probably wondering, wait a minute, Donna Charles, why is that name not ringing a bell? Because guess what? She is running on the independent ticket. See, here on this program, we give opportunity for all candidates here. We forget it's not just a two-party system 24/7. Yes, I understand that the Democratic Party and the Republican Party tends to have a lot more power, but we still need to realize, look, this is 2025 and we have other options. And if you haven't, wondered, the independent movement has been on a rise really since this past presidential race. Now, I've always shared with you all, I've considered myself an independent and really not considered, but I mean, I consider myself a true independent. Look, there's moments where I lean more left. There's moments where I might lean more right. As of right now, the right is losing their mind and the left just can't get their ish together. But let me hold my tongue because I love my job. But I'm just saying, at the end of the day, we need to stop putting party in front of the people, right? Putting politics in front of the people. We need to realize that majority Americans are independent thinkers. They're independent voters. It's just for some odd reason, when it comes to voting day, they just, I just go this way or I just go that side. So I'm very excited to have on Miss Donna Charles because we have a very big race happening in the state of Virginia. And really, Virginia is one of those states that make national news on a regular. I mean, we have a huge impact on the whole national realm of politics. So I'm very excited to have her on here on the Arrington Gavn Show. As always, my friend, thank you so much for taking 1 hour of your time for tuning into the program. Be sure to do me a favor if you happen to be streaming us right now on YouTube, like, subscribe, share. Please continue to share, and we want to keep growing those subscribers and views. We're doing a great job right now, but let's keep that momentum going. So I truly appreciate it. You can also stream us on the GOATverse TV app, the GOATverse TV network. You can tune into the Arrington Gavn Show on there. Just do me a favor, if you haven't downloaded the app yet, please do so. It's available on the App Store, Google Play Store, Roku, as well as Amazon Fire TV. And guess what? Oh, it's free. The app is free. So I don't know about y'all. I like free 99. Just the way prices are in general. I like something free, but it's a growing network, a growing platform that I'm so honored to be a part of. I'm kind of like their first show that adds a little more, politics and pop culture. But they have so many other amazing programs, including myself. And shout out to some of the new shows that's been added to that network, like the Full Package, which is a singing songwriting competition that is really making a lot of noise out there in the masses. So please continue to support them. You can tune into the Arrington Gavn Show wherever you listen to your podcast. We're available on all major podcast platforms. You can also listen to us on the radio airwaves. Okay. Shout out to our listeners tuning into us right now in the New Orleans area by way of WBOK 1230 AM. What New Orleans is talking about. You can tune into the Arrington Gavn Show Monday through Fridays at 7 p.m. Central Time. In addition to that, you can also tune into us in the Metro Atlanta area by way of WDJY 99.1 FM Straight Talk. You can tune into the Arrington Gavn Show weeknights at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So multiple avenues, multiple ways you can tune into the Arrington Gavin show. So that is no excuse if you're saying, wait, where are you guys? I don't know where. No excuse. I want to hear it. I want to hear it. I want to hear it. All right, y'all. Well, look, before we get going with our conversation, I always love to do a quick fun fact of the day. So before we head to a commercial break, let's go ahead and do our quick fun fact of the day. Since we have a special guest that happens to be the independent candidate for governor for the state of Virginia, I want to give you a quick fun fact related to this whole conversation about independent candidates. So, did you know that independent equals most popular label? As of recent Gallup polls, more Americans identify as independents, about 40% or more than Democrat or Republican. I wonder why. Thinking. Well, I'm not gonna think too hard. We're gonna have the conversation with Miss Charles when we bring her on. But again, the facts are facts. The polling is showing. I mean, this most recent presidential race, there were more than, I think, 60 or 64% of folks identified as independent. Like I've always said this, y'all. If we actually sit down and have conversations rather than just continue to, ignore and, do talking points back and forth and all the bickering, we would actually realize, I think we agree on like 80% of the things and just disagree on 20%. But yet we let that 20% overcome the whole entire thing, and we just keep it going with that. So that's not the truth. That's not the case, my friends. So look, we're going to have a good time with Miss Donna Charles. So please do not go anywhere. We have a lot more show for you here on the Arrington Gavin Show. We'll be right back after these commercial breaks.
Every man has a story to tell. Your ambitions, your achievements, your legacy. Your suit should reflect that story, crafted precisely, designed for impact, and tailored exclusively for you. We work with only the finest fabrics, luxurious wools, silk, linen, and blends from world-renowned mills in Italy, the UK, and India. These fabrics are the foundation of custom suits that exude elegance and stand the test of time. But a suit isn't just about fabric, it's about fit, and it's about confidence, and it all starts with you. When you work with me, you'll receive a personalized consultation, whether in person or over Zoom. Together, we'll explore your vision and discuss your needs, and we're gonna bring your ideas to life. My journey as a designer includes apprenticing under New York-based designer Clavon Leonard, showcasing collections at New York Fashion Week, Algeria Fashion Week, and the prestigious Baltimore Met Gala. That experience is what we bring to every suit we create, from weddings to corporate events and everything in between. We specialize in crafting one-of-a-kind suits for life's most significant moments. Dapper Luke has been recognized as one of Baltimore's best menswear in 2023, and I was honored to be one of the 10 designers selected for the prestigious Baltimore Met Gala. With over 900 satisfied clients, we proudly serve Virginia Beach and Baltimore, bringing world-class designs to these incredible communities. We don't just make suits, we craft confidence. Your suit will fit your body, your style, and it will tell your story. Book your free online personal consultation today. Visit www.dapperluke.com.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to
And we still in traffic.
Don't look familiar, do I? Not in this seat.
Hey, what's that you listening to?
Here to host today.
Hey, turn it up.
With me?
Yeah, that's that new Goldverse app. I got you.
So y'all want to know where the goats are? They're off on the sidelines.
Looking for fresh, relevant content wherever you go?
What was the name of that he said?
Introducing Goatverse TV.
Goldverse, that's what it's called.
The free streaming app that brings you the best podcasts, current events, and thought-provoking opinions all in one place. Download it now from the Apple Store or Play Store. In Goats, we trust.
Order your beard care products with Rugged Evolution. We're your local beard care line that supports the maintenance of your full, mature beard. Our line includes conditioning shampoos, moisturizers, balms, oils, shaving lotions, and exfoliating soaps. These products moisturize, hydrate, nourish, and have all the natural ingredients for a healthy beard. Log on to our website or download our app to place your orders. Become a man of distinction with Rugged Evolution Beard Care. And remember,
Rugged is the new smooth.
All right, family. Welcome back to the Arrington Gavin Show. I'm your friend, your homie, Arrington Gavin. And as I mentioned earlier, honored to have a very special guest on, Miss Donna Charles. She is running for governor for the state of Virginia. She is representing the third part. She's the independent candidate for governor of Virginia. So I'm honored to have her on. Without further ado, let me go ahead and bring on our guest of the hour. Hello, hello, hello. How are you doing?
Thank you so much for having me, Arrington. This is such an honor and a pleasure to be on your show.
Oh, thank you so much for taking time out your busy schedule to come for coming on the show. So I truly appreciate that. Look, I want to get it going with a lot of your what you're running for. But before I do that, if you can just introduce yourself to our audience, just a little bit about yourself that maybe the public doesn't know.
Sure. Well, as you mentioned, I'm running as an independent candidate. That means that I am not running under the banner of a political party, not the Democrats, not the Republican, or not even a third party. Technically, I'm running as an independent candidate. I haven't taken a single money in corporate or dark money, special interest money. So far, I'm largely self-financed, and I am looking forward to garnering more support from those who are just as independent-minded as you and I. But generally speaking, as somebody who has spent over 20 years in public service, including time as an active duty military officer, U.S. Air Force, as well as over 10 years in the federal civil service, I am very eager to hit the ground running once I get to Richmond next year. I am very confident that once people understand what it is I'm running for, they would be more inclined to support my candidacy and my campaign. Running for governor of Virginia is no easy task, and people always ask me what makes me think I'm qualified to do it. And we'll get into that discussion, but I'm so excited to be part of this process because I think it's really part of what shores up our democracy in this country and speaks truth to power when it comes to what America is all about.
Wow. Well, for one, thank you for your service. What led to this, this journey now to say, okay, look, I want to run I'm not even starting on the local level, not even on the state. I mean, well, yes, on the state level. I mean, there's so many, I feel like, other avenues of getting involved in, because if may I ask, this is your very first time really stepping into power. Okay, so this is your very first time. So this is like this is big. This is big time. This is major. Was there anything like that a part of your upbringing that has provided that drive that, okay, if I see an issue, I'm going to do something about it rather than skip over and say, oh, you're not my problem. I'll let somebody else handle that. Like, has that always been, a drive, or for you, has that been like the genesis for you currently, how you landed now?
Absolutely. And part of my nature is not to stand on the sidelines. Part of my nature is to jump in with both feet and not only serve my country as I've done for over 20 years, but to also help my fellow citizens, my fellow residents of Virginia. I've always been like that. I mean, even from the time that I started Girl Scouts as a brownie, selling cookies like a maniac. By the way, I was a cookie selling machine. But Girl Scouts was part of a broader inclination I had toward public service. And it was relatively easy too, because I also grew up in a household where selflessness and gratitude was a part of our everyday life. My mother is a West African immigrant, but she's also an American citizen. And we have a lot of family members in West Africa who, even though I came from very modest means, I had family members who were not even nearly as well off as we were here in the United States. I grew up watching my mother take all of my, my clothing that didn't fit me, toys I wasn't using, throw them into barrels and send them overseas for family members who not only use those items for themselves, but mostly use them to start their own little businesses and try to sustain themselves and their family. So this is something I grew up seeing as a function of selflessness, service, trying to help people get a leg up. And so Girl Scouts was another thing. We went to nursing homes. It was just in my blood. So joining the service to me was also a very natural part of that too. And that drive just continues to increase over time.
Wow. Well, that's awesome, because I think one thing that a lot of voters and just say everyday American people are frustrated in our current, society is that there's so many elected officials that are caught doing shiesty stuff, right? So to that's one of the most hugely, disrespectful things you could do to a voter who has taken the leap to vote for you to spend.
Abuser. Yep.
Absolutely. And then on top of that, I mean, we have so many candidates that are over promising things, and then yet the delivery is so like at the bottom of the barrel. So once again, people are losing trust on a rapid basis. I think we've seen in certain local communities how voting turnout is at a low point. I was talking with a friend of mine during the when was it, during like the primary season we had not too long ago in my home area, and the turnout was trash. I mean, nobody came out. Now, don't get me wrong, it was primary is usually a lot lower than the general election, but still they should be treated equally. And I mean, there's so many folks that it's like, why bother? Why do this? Why do that? So I think it's important the fact that we have people like yourself that's saying, look, I was raised to be a public servant. And I think a lot of there's a good number of elected officials that forget they are public servants. They're not here to be, on top of the world. They're not here to abuse their power. You're here to be public servants. So when was it an awakening for you to say, okay, look,
Sure.
I got something. I'm running for governor. I mean, that's again, I've always asked this question for anybody, whether if they're local level, local city manager to all the way to governor to all the way to president. Like, what's going in your mind to say, like, were you binge watching a favorite TV show and you know what? I got to make an announcement. Like, what was going on?
It's a really good question, and one I get often, and I'm always happy to answer it. And it goes back to what you were asking me before in terms of, kind of skipping over several levels of elected office to go straight for the governorship.
Mm-hmm.
I always point to the fact that we have several examples around us, especially in our immediate sort of DMV area, of individuals who, how I guess I can say shot their shot and went directly to the governorship. Prime example, Wes Moore. Wes Moore went straight from, the civilian sector, private sector, to running for governor. He didn't serve in Congress before, anything like that. Same thing with Glenn Youngkin. Glenn Youngkin went straight from the private sector to running for governor. So while I always appreciate getting the question about, what is it in your mind that didn't decide to go for House delegate or state senator first, nobody really seems to ask that question of these, of these elected officials. And so when I think about my background, again, over 20 years of public service leadership positions, I've been a military officer. I've had troops. I've had to manage multi-million-dollar budgets. I've had to do the hard work. I've gone overseas and have done the difficult work to protect our country. I look at my record of public service and see absolutely no reason to not engage in the civic process in a way that best suits my background, my training, my skills, and my aptitude to engage people at a very fundamental level. And the campaign that I've been running thus far is one that focuses on the working class, focuses on people who tend to be ignored, tend to be left in the margins, tend to feel like they're screaming into the void. And that's one of the reasons I decided I'm going to run for governor, because I have experienced personally a lot of the things that the constituents here in Virginia are facing every day and go unnoticed, right? So as a public servant who has faced things like wrongful termination, political retaliation for speaking truth to power, I was determined, again, with my experience working in national security at the White House, working on Capitol Hill as a staffer, understanding how things like legislation work and how we negotiate legislation and what ends up happening in that horse trading when legislation ends up falling by the wayside and why that happens. All of this time that I've spent really working in leadership positions and in support positions has primed me for this opportunity. But my main decision to run for office was because I was tired of seeing elected officials, as you mentioned, not only look at their positions, not just governorship, but members of Congress, delegates, state senators, as a jobs program, as an entitlement, rather than as a role where you're a public servant meant to look out for the very people that have put you in that office. And so my motivation really stemmed from the experiences I've had in recent years where the political retaliation and the bullying, if you will, that I've seen over the last several years for speaking truth to power about things like border security and national security, I decided, you know what, I'm not going to sit here and cry about it. I'm going to do something about it. Yeah. And I know that I'm just as qualified as the next person, if not more so, to be governor of this wonderful state, Commonwealth of Virginia.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, look, I'm almost at a loss of words after that, because what you're saying is all true. Obviously, you have the resume to back up why you are highly qualified to run for office. And, you know, we live in a country where some of the most underqualified people can sit on the highest seat. I'm not going to say any names, but I'm just saying, you know, we have, but it's very true. We've seen folks that haven't even, you know, ran for hall monitor, and yet they continue to make it. And it's just, it goes into the big picture of,
that's a good one.
It goes to the big picture of people are starting to vote more based on access, based on, you know, the financial stability of the candidate, and so much more. Because I want to kind of move it on to, you are running as an independent. Now, I mentioned earlier in the show how there's been polling showing that majority of Americans consider themselves independent voters, or excuse me, just independents. But they might, when it comes to, you know, voting season, they might start leaning more towards either the left or the right. Have you, you know, what do you say to folks that consider you a spoiler candidate or distraction, because they're saying, oh my gosh, here's this person just here to pull votes? Because that's how a lot of, you know, third party or independent candidates have always kind of, you know, felt that, you know, or received that backlash from the public, and really preferably from, you know, folks on the Republican Party or the Democratic Party. What's your response to folks to say, okay, oh, this person's just a distraction, just here to just, you know, make some noise? What is your answer, Miss Charles?
Well, a couple of things. I mean, aside from the fact that, you know, we should be doing everything we can to encourage people to engage in our civic process, not even just voting, right, and making sure they're even registered to vote and understanding the issues, but running for office. And it's that kind of mentality that's often bred from a state of fear. It's a fear-based politics and a fear-based narrative that is really meant to serve those who are in power and want to maintain the status quo, maintain the current power structure. And a lot of people don't realize that they are parroting that narrative, not as a function of realizing that having more people in the race empowers them as voters. What they're doing is they're parroting a narrative that serves to prop up a system that is failing before our very eyes. And that's one of the reasons that you mentioned a very good point about the statistic that more people see themselves as independent, because the average American has watched the two-party system fall down and fail them time and time again. And having that latitude as a voter to say, I want to vote based on the issues that matter to me versus voting along a straight party line or a straight ticket, is really what the American system of democracy, of representative democracy, is and should be all about. And I go back to, and again, regardless of what you feel about someone like George Washington as a founding father, he had some very prescient words on his way out of Mount Vernon in 1796, his departing, his farewell speech. There's a point in there where he talked about factionalism, right? And to paraphrase, the two-party system, and how factionalism will lead to the rise of a tyrant, right? This is something that he talked about in 1796. He very well understood that a party-based system, a system that is focused on political party allegiance, will lead to the rise of a tyrannical figure, because that constant back and forth,
that constant division,
that tug of war between two very powerful entities will lead to stagnation, lack of progress on policy, a lack of voice for the voter, and ultimately they will look to an individual to break that cycle. And that's what we're seeing today. And it's an unfortunate reality. So what I say to the person who says, oh, you're just a spoiler, I would hope that anybody who thinks about what democracy is about and what we, even as our diplomat corps, when they go overseas and they talk about democracy with our foreign counterparts, and they talk about a pluralist a voting system and a pluralist governance system, and having multiple parties and having as many candidates in the race as possible. But then yet, when we talk about our own system, oh no, you're a spoiler. You know, we do everything we can to subvert and water down our system of democracy while trying to spread it everywhere else, because we realize that at the end of the day, there's an ecosystem in this country that thrives from a two-party system in this day and age. There's a reason elections and campaigns have become so expensive to run. There's a reason that we see these consultant agencies and communications outfits and all of these people making millions of dollars off of a system that props up a Democrat and Republican sort of volleyball match, right? Where we're constantly going back and forth and nothing gets done. I'll tell you right now, folks that are being fired all over the federal government, they have both parties to blame for that. And we can get into some of that, but it's one of the reasons I decided that going independent is the right thing to do, because both parties have fallen down on the job.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, we're seeing it now firsthand. We see division happening within their own parties. We see, you know, a separation from, you have the, you know, the Republican Party and the MAGA Party, two different parties within that one conservative movement. You have the Democrats, progressives against moderates, right?
Absolutely.
We see the race happening in New York City with the mayor. I mean, that's insane. You have a former governor that is sad because he can't even win a primary local race, and now he's announced that he's running as an independent candidate. So it's like, okay, what is the deal here? So, and I go back to the growth of the independent movement, because I just had pulled up when you were explaining, I had pulled up a recent race that happened last year, a U.S. Senate election that happened in Nebraska, where gentleman Dan Osborne, independent, highly overperformed. And right then and there, I mean, that's a prime example of, look, folks are fed up. Look, I don't know why, and I'm not saying, you know, voters get hesitant when they do enter in the voting box. But you mentioned one point as far as like elections are extremely expensive. I mean, hey, the Democratic Party spent damn near $1 billion on the presidential race, and they lost. So I mean, you know, money well spent, not really. But I mean, it was just, and no disrespect, because I was not happy with the overall outcome of the presidential election. But I'm just saying, the money is a big deal. I've seen local races that has hit almost $800,000 for local races. I'm like,
and that Nebraska race that you mentioned was one of the most expensive in history. And then we're seeing even the race for the Supreme Court judgeship in Wisconsin and in North Carolina breaking records as well. I mean, we're not even talking about representative. We're talking about Supreme Court, state Supreme Court judgeships that are running into the millions of dollars. And you had someone with the likes of Elon Musk trying to buy out that election as well in Wisconsin. So you're absolutely right. There is definitely a money train. And when you follow the money, you find a lot of people who get very wealthy. There's a donor class that benefits from the system the way it is, right? Having a bunch of what they call randoms, independents coming in there. It's kind of like the theory of, basic physics. When you start introducing things into the system that it wasn't programmed for, then you start to see results that you cannot control for. And that's one of the reasons you see the ecosystem do everything it can to shield the two-party system and blot out independent and third parties, because you have donors and you have corporate interests, you have special interests that like a very controlled system, because control is about measurement, it's about manipulation, and it's about containment. And if you can have those three elements, I mean, it's something that we also talk about in the intelligence field as well, that control requires those three things: contain, measure, manipulate, right? And if you do not have control and you have people like the likes of me or the Dan Osborns or what have you coming into the ecosystem and disrupting it, it's very difficult to make sure the outcomes benefit your bottom line.
Wow. Ms. Charles, how long has this been going on? I think that's another question a lot of folks are like, how long has this really just abuse of power, this, in my opinion, folks buying Congress and buying, the Senate, how long at least have you seen, or you could think of when this had started, or how many years has this been going on?
I would say for time immemorial, but that would be an overstatement. But I think at least in American history, you can go back to the era of, the Gilded Age and the robber barons, right? Where you had the likes of Standard Oil and a lot of these, these massive corporations that have made their money off of the Industrial Revolution were buying politicians back then. I mean, and it goes back even prior to that.
Wow.
And so this is not a new phenomenon in terms of the hyper corrupt elements that you see that allow money to be injected into a system and essentially force, if not buy, the allegiance of politicians over that of the people who elect them. But at the end of the day, we're seeing a slightly different phenomenon in the modern era, where you have the information technology and information communication age. What we have now is a very different witch's brew than we did in the era of robber barons and carpetbaggers and things of the like, because the media was still a very important part of that. And make no mistake, it was definitely very much controlled by a handful of very powerful elites that allowed certain messages to filter through and definitely made sure to stop other messages from coming through. So we're still seeing the same thing, but a lot of people don't realize the extent to which the media ecosystem, be it either traditional or even non-traditional, right? We're talking about social media, we're talking about independent bloggers and things of that nature, how much of that is also part of the same system that we saw over a century ago, where there are certain voices that end up being blotted out by systems that are controlled by those who have interest in seeing the status quo. That's why I'm so appreciative of people like you who are willing to platform people like me, because you're not going to see me being interviewed by the likes of Cardinal News or Virginia Mercury or what have you. You're not going to see me on the likes of CNN or MSNBC. And that is because a lot of people do not want to admit that the political system as we know it, both Democrats and Republicans, have a vested interest in controlling a narrative and making sure people who go to the ballot box are thinking, I'm just gonna go safe. I want my guy, or I want my party to win, so I'm gonna go safe because of that fear. When in reality, if people were willing to understand how much that narrative is meant to control and meant to deny them agency, where you're voting out of fear versus voting out of the power you actually have, you would be surprised at the change. That's why what's going on in New York is so phenomenal, because you not only have someone like Zoran Mamdani who's broken through grassroots support and effort, but you also have the ranked choice voting mechanism that has added fuel to that engine. So that, I think, is a phenomenal example of why it's important for people to understand how this system is manipulating the way we think about politics.
So in the Baptist church, they always tell the pastor when the pastor's on fire, let them use you, let them use you. You mentioned something as far as folks need to realize their vote is their power. They don't realize how much power they have. Their vote, instead of using your voice, your voice is in your vote. There is a lot of power in that vote. So I just wanted to, when you had said that, I felt the chills, like, whoa, she's speaking on something.
But Arrington, I want to go back to a point that you mentioned about low turnout as well. I mean, I know that primaries, historically are relatively low turnout. But when you think about the election here in Virginia for governor, for lieutenant governor, for AG, and you think about, comparative races like what happened in New Jersey, I think it's important to draw a picture of the contrast that we see, okay? And I'm sure you talk to people all the time who may be very well informed, But there are just as many, if not more, who not only not know that there's a race going on this year, okay, who don't, if they do know, they don't know who the candidates are. If they do know who the candidates are, they don't know what the issues that they're running on, where they've gotten their money from, right? What their agenda is, and the groups that are backing them, what their agenda is. Now first of all, we had no primary for governor of Virginia. We had a primary for lieutenant governor, we had a primary for AG, and a lot of the other races below that. When you look at New Jersey, you had on both sides of the aisle, everybody and their grandmother running for governor. Okay, but everybody and their grandmother. They had 5 or 6 people on each side running for governor. I'm not trying to compare Virginia to New Jersey, but like you had mentioned, Virginia is a very important state for several reasons.
It is. It very is.
You think of the concentration of power here in Virginia, and it makes you wonder, because a lot of people don't think about it. Why wasn't there a primary? What happened?
It was very interesting because you initially had one of the one of the candidates running for lieutenant governor at the time had started off running for governor and then dropped it. I mean, it's something to think about. It's something to think about. It is something to think about. And you know, again, I'll play a little devil's advocate. Some folks will say, well, look, there is a time and a place when is the right time to run, because I use an example of basketball, right? So you have folks, and I didn't want to speak on this too long because I definitely want to talk about your platform. But when in basketball, when you are a top prospect in college, and they say, okay, look, you're doing so great your freshman year, just enter in the draft after your freshman year because your prospect is so high, your stock value is very high. And so they're saying either you can pursue running for higher office, or I think you should stay and get your experience. So I'll play a little devil's advocate on that piece, as far as, look, maybe it was he spoke a little too soon, right? Maybe they say, okay, look, just come down, just learn a little bit, then but no, I totally understand what where you're going with that. But but I would love to I want to did you want to respond to that? Are you good? Okay.
You said it perfectly well.
But I would love to get on your to talk about your platform. So
Sure.
Ms. Charles, what separates you from your opponents? You have on the Republican nominee, you have Lieutenant Governor Winston Sears. She's current Lieutenant Governor for the state of Virginia. Very extremely conservative, right? Very conservative. And then you have on the Democratic side, you have a former Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger running, and then you have yourself in the center running for office. What separates you from your opponents?
So several things, and it's a really great question. The first and foremost is that I am willing to commit to take the kind of pledges that I think the independent voter and I think the average voter would appreciate, right? I have pledged to, and I have not taken a single dollar from, dark money, corporate interests, special interest groups that are very interested in seeing candidates doing their bidding. So that's the first thing, and one of the major things that separates me from both of the party candidates in the race. The second thing is that I'm also willing to speak on and go into the spaces and the issues that they are either unwilling to go into or discuss, or unable to for any number of reasons. So, for instance, on the issue of minimum wage, we have one candidate who wouldn't even consider it as a function of being Republican. But then you have another candidate who, in Abigail Spanberger, who said that she, would raise a minimum wage. And one of the things I pointed out in one of the videos that I launched early on in my campaign is the fact that I have the benefit of having worked on Capitol Hill as a staffer. And it just so happens that I was a staffer on Capitol Hill for one of the committees that she served on, Foreign Affairs Committee. And while I was only on the Hill for 2 years or so, I have a very good understanding of what ends up happening in the legislative process. And this is a candidate who, in her first 2 terms as Congresswoman, co-sponsored legislation that was introduced by Representative Bobby Scott almost every Congress. All right. It's called the Raise the Wage Act. Okay. The federal minimum wage in this country is $7.25, and it hasn't been raised since 2009. Okay, which is unconscionable, right? So, like many other Virginia Democrats, the Democrat caucus for the House, mostly, you have no issue. People co-sponsor that legislation as a matter of course, and it's not a difficult thing to do. Okay, Beyer does it, McClellan, the list goes on, right? The last Congress that she served in, when she was at the time gearing up to run for office, right, or to at least start garnering the donor support, because she started very early, 2023. All of a sudden, she didn't co-sponsor that legislation. Now, my whole thing is like, I'll hear what you say, but I look at what you do and what you don't do as a strong indicator of what your values are. And there's definitely a reason that she did not co-sponsor that legislation when she did it 2 times prior. Because the Raise the Wage Act is it should not be controversial for Democrats. But when you think about the fact that the Democrats under the Biden administration had all 3 levers of power, they had the House, the Senate, and the White House, and still did not manage to raise the minimum wage. Okay? Now, again, I'm willing to speak truth to power to these issues because people look at their circumstances now. Look at what's going on, One Big Beautiful Bill. All of the benefits that are going to be stripped away from the working class, for people who already work their fingers to the bone.
Yep.
You can say whatever you want to, right? Especially when you are a former case officer, which again, by nature, that's what they do. They say whatever they want to, whatever they need to. But at the end of the day, your actions always speak louder than words. There's a reason she did not co-sponsor that legislation. There's a reason she didn't do it. So I'm always willing to speak truth to power. Same thing on the energy issue. When we're talking about the gas plants that often are targeted in low income areas where people are getting physically ill from the presence of these toxins that are spewed from these plants. I'm not saying that we shouldn't use some of the carbon resources that we have responsibly, but I think that we need to consider why it is that the low income working class communities are always bearing the brunt of these failed policies, and meanwhile are still expected to go faithfully to the polls and vote along party lines. It is it's unconscionable. But again, it's part of the system, and that's what makes me different. I'm willing to talk about those issues about how we need to diversify our energy sources. I'm willing to talk about issues related to minimum wage and housing, and the fact that Virginia is on the brink of a housing crisis that is going to continue to negatively affect the working class. How do we fix that? I have real policies to address that. And I'm always willing to talk face to face, eye to eye to any voter who wants to know where I stand on these issues. So that's what makes me different. I go into the spaces where other candidates refuse to go.
Wow. Well, look, let's take a quick breather because I definitely want to get onto that housing issue, and I would love to, you to share, if you don't mind, about that policy, because me being in Chesapeake, I have seen a lot of issues when it comes to affordable housing. Chesapeake is the largest city population-wise in the state, second largest city in the state of Virginia. We have a lot of how can I say it? When it comes to the value of homes, a lot of folks. I was talking with a lady not too long ago. Her daughter had just graduated from college. She would love to live in Chesapeake, but she can't afford, so she has to move to another city. But work in Chesapeake. She's working in Chesapeake, but she has to live, I'm gonna just say 30-40 minutes away, just because it's what she can afford. And when we see a lot of new projects being built, is luxury this, luxury that, luxury this. I'm like, okay, but what's the deal here? We're really struggling out here. So I would love to talk about that, but let's take just a quick breather. We'll be back with more here with candidate for Virginia, governor candidate, independent governor candidate, Miss Donna Charles, here on the Arrington Gavn Show. So don't go anywhere, my friends. We'll be right back after these commercial breaks.
Gavn Learning Institute, LLC, is a hybrid learning center that strives to educate adults and children in all fields. During the day, we offer programs that are focused on developing students from pre-K to 12th grade, which includes tutoring, homeschool co-op, an after-school program, SAT, ACT prep, and many more engaging academic programs. Our adult education programs include workforce trainings, GED prep, life coaching, various seminars, and many more. Our vision is to train and educate in a positive way that will lead to a positive change in the world, one person at a time. For more information, visit us online at JazarianLearningInstitute.com or call us at 757-208-7407.
All right, family, welcome back to the Arrington Gavin Show. Miss Charles, I'm here talking with our guest, Miss Charles, Donna Charles. She is the independent candidate running for governor for the state of Virginia. We were talking, you had mentioned about Virginia being on the verge of a housing crisis. Do you mind expanding that, what you had spoken about earlier?
Sure. So I've had the pleasure and opportunity to talk to housing advocates throughout the state to discuss some of the core issues here in Virginia, especially as it relates to housing. And it's not just about sort of the housing stocks and how we're seeing, as you had mentioned, Arrington, very aptly, that we're seeing a glut of housing stocks in the sort of the luxury market, right? And on the higher end of the
everybody's turning stuff to like touristy spots. I didn't even cut you off, but it's like so many.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, I live in Arlington. I live in Northern Virginia. I live in an area where I can literally see, several units that are vacant, and there are buildings that are just going up left and right all over the place. And so we have a glut in certain housing stocks at certain categories, right? But then you also have an issue when it comes to obtainable and sustainable housing. And one of the reasons I use those terms as opposed to affordable housing is because in my conversations with housing advocates during this campaign, that term affordable is very much a buzzword that lacks teeth, it lacks meaning. Because what is affordable? That's obviously a relative term. What's affordable to one may not be affordable to another. And so in talking to housing advocates, especially organizations like the NAACP, talking to people who focus on housing advocacy, obtainability and sustainability are the two operative words that we need to focus on from a policy perspective. And what do I mean? One of the reasons I was kind of tied up today is because I was helping one of my staff members deal with a housing issue, and it underpins the major problem that a lot of people at either the middle or lower end of the income bracket face. Mm-hmm. There's a lack of structure and accountability for property owners who are willing to take advantage of people who are either in dire straits, who may not understand or know their rights. But on top of that, we don't have an overall authority here or a board here in Virginia that allows people, and I'm not talking about just tenants, but also landlords and owners, allow them a process to help adjudicate and address issues before they get to the court system, right? Because as anybody knows who's ever obtained or retained a lawyer, that's very expensive. Going through the court system for any of that stuff is very expensive. Why not have a system whereby either the state level or connected to municipalities or some combination thereof, a board that can hear cases by people who are of middle or lower income or modest means, who need assistance with getting housing, who need assistance with voucher appeals, who need assistance with maybe a landlord-tenant dispute, before it clogs up a court system. And I'm not just talking about legal aid where you have one entity that is overburdened with dealing with a massive backlog of cases. I'm talking about a state and local level enterprise that allows people to bring their cases when it comes to assistance, when it comes to either a grievance or something of that nature. So that's one of the issues that I would like to see as governor of Virginia, that I would implement and work closely with housing advocacy groups to address. People need to have recourse when it comes to gaining access to housing, to sustaining that. The homelessness crisis that we're seeing, homeless camps popping up in areas like Richmond and elsewhere, and we're seeing it in Arlington and Northern Virginia and Alexandria and elsewhere. There's absolutely no reason that one of the richest country in the world should see a housing issue like that, a homelessness issue like that. And I point to what happened in Grants Pass, Oregon, where they took their case to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled that municipalities can criminalize homelessness. Well, guess what? Grants Pass, Oregon is still dealing with homeless encampments that are threatening the livelihoods and the stability of people who live in these areas. People have had to spend tens of thousands of dollars on security systems. They're dealing with a crime rate that is rapidly increasing. And yet the Supreme Court ruled, yeah, you can criminalize homelessness, and what has it gotten them? So my argument is that if we address the issue on the front end, you won't have to pay for it on the tail end, right? If you address the issue by allowing policies to be put in place to help those who are in acute and dire need, you won't be dealing with some of the public safety issues that are threatening not only your life and your livelihood, but also your property values. So let's look at this as a mutually beneficial situation. That's the type of work that I think that you can do in the state level and empower municipalities to take charge as well. So that's the type of work that I think a governor should be thinking creatively about.
That's so important, because the first thing that comes to my mind, I'm just thinking when you were explaining it, I'm like, we've always heard the phrase, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But in this case, it's been broken. Why ain't nobody fixing it? Right? Like, I'm like, why is that? And again, you just spoke on a way that can benefit really everyone, because you're like, okay, look, if something that's broken continues to worsen and worsen, what does that do? That continues. If for example, you're driving a car, if you say, okay, something's wrong with all my tires, but I'm not going to check it now. Okay, if that becomes an issue and you don't take care of it, then another issue. You find it's just, it worsens. But
it becomes a public health crisis.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
And that's one of the things that and you don't have to look very far in terms of media coverage. When you look at what's going on in California and places like Oregon and Washington State, it becomes a public health issue that everybody suffers from. So why not make the investments you need on the front end to ensure that people are able to live in dignity and safety and self-respect, while you ensure that a public safety issue like homelessness does not come to your front door? Because guess what? If you want to play the NIMBY game, not in my backyard, fine. Guess what? You're going to end up having a bunch of, vans and campers down the street, and you can't wonder why it is that you're seeing piles of human feces and bottles full of urine, piling up in your public parks and in your public spaces. We have to fix the issue on the front end. It benefits everybody.
One thing, I'm looking at my time, Ms. Charles, and we have maybe about no, you're fine. You probably have a few minutes left into this conversation.
Sure.
But if it's okay, I would love to talk a little more with you post show, if that's okay. With you. We're witnessing a lot of, I think we might have hit it earlier in the conversation, or maybe before the show, but people are losing their jobs left and right. When it comes to the state of Virginia, it's summed up of a lot of federal workers and government workers. And I know for me in Hampton Roads, we have a lot of military bases. Newport News has the largest naval base or shipbuilding there, and so on and so on. But we've witnessed a lot of folks lose their jobs with through government cuts, through job cuts, and then we're also seeing cuts of funding. You see now happening with the Department of Education possibly being wiped away, and it's just so many other things we couldn't imagine will ever happen is happening. How do you, as governor, because when if elected, you will be working with Washington under this administration, and how do you manage to take care of your constituents as well as work along with Washington? How would you maneuver that?
Sure. Well, one of the things that I pride myself on as being an independent is that I'd be able to work both sides of the aisle, no problem, because I do not necessarily feel that political ideology should stop us from doing the work of the people. Okay. So I know that I will be effective because I will not have that baggage of, the political stripes, right? Being red or blue. That's the first thing. But when it comes to the issue of jobs and the economy here in Virginia, I posted a very interesting article from Cardinal News talking about the pressures that Northern Virginia is facing and how the economic pressures and how that's going to affect rural Virginia because of the way our economies are tied. One of the things that I think the next governor, and hopefully that will be me, will have to address is the diversification of our economy. Because as you mentioned very, very, very properly, that there's a very high concentration of government sector, public sector work in the Commonwealth. And we're not just talking about defense and the Defense Department. We're also talking about, you had over 1,300 State Department employees just laid off. You'd mentioned the cuts that were just approved by the Supreme Court for the Department of Education. We have the highest concentration of federal employees in the country here in Virginia. I mean, that is without a fact, without a doubt. Maryland is second. So what I'm talking about, the diversification of our economy, is looking at the industries that are overtaking our lives, either for better or for worse. We're talking about information technology, the reality of data centers, the energy infrastructure in the state of Virginia. And then you also have the administration of public services that are going to become even more critical as the federal government strips away benefits from those who are most in need. So you have a combination of factors here that I think we can leverage the expertise coming out of the federal government to help administer things like improving protections for children, child protective services, making sure that we have better oversight of our public safety issues, law enforcement, criminal justice, and things of that nature. There's no reason that we shouldn't be able to fill jobs that are open here, but also looking at ways to bring in the expertise from, again, the research arm and the federal government focusing on engineering when it comes to diversification of our energy sources. When we look at things like solar and wind and geothermal, when we look at the infrastructure that we're going to need as far as data centers, because we're not going to be able to really stop the proliferation of data centers. We do see that there's a need for that, but the regulation of those data centers will be critical to ensure that they are good neighbors for the residents of those communities that house those data centers. So why not ensure that we diversify our economy, especially when it comes to tourism, when it comes to our ecosystem here, our natural landscapes, our parks, or what have you. We have to diversify our economy in a way that helps buttress us, helps protect us from the blows that are coming from Washington. So we have an opportunity there. And I did a video the other day. I hope your viewers go take a look at it, talking about a greener, cleaner, and healthier Virginia. It's not just about the controversy surrounding whether or not we should be creating more gas plants here in Virginia. The reality is that from a national security perspective, it makes perfect sense to diversify our energy sources. We should not be putting all of our eggs or most of our eggs in one basket. And then that's where I think we have an opportunity to help diversify our economy and improve access to good paying jobs for people both in blue collar and white collar professions.
Ms. Charles, I have your website for those who are watching us right now. I have your website here, donna4va.com. Any other ways? You have about 15 seconds. Any other ways people can stay in contact with you or just stay up to speed of what's going on in your race?
Please do. I'm on all the socials. I'm on TikTok. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Blue Sky and X. But I also ask people to consider, again, a small dollar donation to my campaign. $3, $5, whatever you can spare will bring us a long way, because running as an independent and running a grassroots campaign is difficult. It is expensive. And it requires the support of all of you so that I can maintain my pledge of not taking corporate money. So I ask that you go to donna4va.com, go to the donate section, and you can also do a text to donate. If you text 801-801 and enter Donna, you can donate from your mobile phone as well. And all I'm asking for is $3 and $5 or whatever you can spare to help fuel this grassroots movement for independent leadership in Richmond.
Miss Charles, it's been an honor to speak with you. I want to talk with you a little bit more post-show, so don't go anywhere. But again, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule for coming here for a great conversation here on the Arrington Gavn Show. So best of luck with you on your campaign, and we will be staying. Absolutely, absolutely. My friends, I hope y'all all enjoyed another great conversation here on the Arrington Gavn Show. I'll talk to y'all soon on another great episode. Peace and blessings.